R-rated movies have never found it easy to make big bucks at the box office, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. From passion projects to the latest Hollywood tentpoles, these are the highest-grossing R-rated movies of all time at the worldwide box office, according to data site Box Office Mojo. Dropping at the end of June 2012, Seth MacFarlane's directorial debut Ted was a massive sleeper hit that grossed $549.3 million worldwide. In fact, Ted was the biggest R-rated non-sequel comedy released up to that point in time.
Because how can you have any pudding if you don't eat your meat? Right? That's the Pink Floyd thing.
This was a particularly impressive feat, given how American comedies sometimes have a difficult time resonating with audiences in foreign countries. It's easy for certain costumes, jokes, or references to American culture to get lost in translation. With Ted, though, that wasn't a problem, as the sight of a raunchy yet cuddly teddy bear getting up to hijinks appeared to transcend language barriers. It helped that the film was redubbed for certain countries, a feat that could be achieved more easily thanks to Ted being a CG creation. As a result, Ted ended up flourishing in countries like Russia and Japan, where American comedies usually struggle, helping it score a killing at the global box office. The Chinese box office has witnessed a meteoric rise over the last decade, to the point that in 2020, it handily overtook America as the biggest movie marketplace in the world. An early sign that China was becoming a box office force to be reckoned with came with 2016's The Mermaid. Directed by Stephen Chow, the film was already looking like a box office hit, thanks to savvy marketing, the decision to unleash the feature one day after Chinese New Year, and the box office track record of previous Chow features. Nevertheless, The Mermaid obliterated all expectations during its box office run, which saw it cracking $150 million in China after just 4 days of release. This made it clear that The Mermaid would be a massive hit, but even at that point, nobody could conceive of just how big it would become. Eventually, the movie became the first to gross over $500 million in China alone, surpassing Monster Hunt to become the biggest movie ever at the Chinese box office. There was once a time when Hollywood not only regularly made steamy erotic thrillers, but when audiences showed up to them in droves. Basic Instinct made $352.7 million in the early 1990s, while Fatal Attraction had earned $320 million before that. Of course, nobody can reign supreme forever, and a number of subsequent flops led Hollywood to largely abandon the genre by the late 1990s. So, fans of steamy, melodramatic cinema were no doubt overjoyed when the erotic thriller made a major comeback in 2015, thanks to the release of 50 Shades of Grey.
Let me touch you. Let me.
The movie made $569.6 million worldwide, an outstanding box office haul made even more impressive given that, unlike many of its predecessors, 50 Shades didn't have any particularly big-name stars attached. The film got by on the brand name of its source material, a lot of hot and heavy action, and the fact that sex always seems to draw a crowd. The Hangover was a rare breed of blockbuster, the truly rewatchable original comedy movie featuring lead actors who weren't big stars at the time of its release. Despite that, audiences flocked to the movie, turning it into a worldwide sensation that completely upended the norm for what R-rated comedies could do at the 21st century box office. Given that level of popularity, it should be no surprise that The Hangover Part II was an even bigger hit than the original. The Hangover Part II didn't quite enjoy the longevity of its predecessor, but it still burned bright in theaters, with a massive worldwide gross of $586.7 million, opening the next Hangover just 2 years after the initial movie, and over the Memorial Day holiday weekend to boot, turned out to be a savvy move for the raunchy follow-up. Part 2 was also banking on audiences loving that first movie so much, and this turned out to be more than enough to make the movie a gigantic blockbuster. There was a time when it looked like The Passion of the Christ would end up being the next ill-fated passion project from a famous actor. You know, a real Waterworld kind of situation. The fact that it was being distributed independently, along with director Mel Gibson's streak of controversial behavior at the beginning of the 2000s, seemed to spell doom for the production even before its release. But The Passion didn't just become profitable, it became a box office juggernaut, one that took in $612 million worldwide. This included a gargantuan $371 million domestic haul, which made it the biggest R-rated domestic release of all time, until it was usurped by this guy.
I am Marvel Jesus.
The Passion of the Christ benefited from outreach to Christian groups as well as a perfect release date that allowed it to play throughout the spring. The movie's excessive violence and controversial nature also made it a conversation piece that people had to see in order to discuss. As a result, this likely flop turned into a holy hit. The first Deadpool movie changed the Hollywood consensus in 2016, as it became clear that R-rated comic book movies could make as much money as their PG-13 counterparts. Hoping to continue that trend was Logan, the third solo Wolverine movie and the first time the character would star in an R-rated movie. It was a bold gamble for a number of reasons. For one thing, Logan lacked the kind of large-scale set pieces that define most comic book movies. For another, Wolverine's solo outings hadn't exactly set the box office on fire, with The Wolverine becoming the lowest-grossing X-Men movie domestically until Dark Phoenix rolled around. Despite these issues, Logan ended up becoming nothing short of a smash hit. During its theatrical run, the movie grossed $619.1 million worldwide, putting it ahead of all the other non-Deadpool X movies except Days of Future Past. Taking a bold swing with Wolverine in a gloomy quasi-western may have seemed like it could alienate audiences, but thanks to stellar early reviews and the fact that it was supposed to be Hugh Jackman's last run as a character, Logan did gangbusters at the blockbuster marketplace. Sadly, the glory days of China's box office appear to have fallen by the wayside. The country still produces one or two blockbusters each year that can stand toe-to-toe with the biggest American movies in raw box office grosses. However, the days of movies such as Wolf Warrior 2 or The Battle at Lake Changjin, taking in over $800 million in China alone, appear to be long gone. One of the last beneficiaries of China's massive box office wave was Detective Chinatown 3. Despite being delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic, Detective Chinatown 3 grossed a massive $686.2 million, almost exclusively from its home country. What went right? Well, the passionate Chinese movie-going public certainly helped, as well as a heap of residual goodwill from the previous Detective Chinatown installments. This was enough to make Detective Chinatown 3 the 8th biggest R-rated release at the global box office. Horror movies aren't designed to be box office juggernauts, as they're usually cheap enough to make a profit without needing to hit $400 million worldwide. However, in recent years, horror films have begun to hit new box office highs, and nowhere was this more apparent than with It Chapter 1.
Time to float.
The movie's astonishing $704.2 million worldwide gross occurred mostly thanks to its beloved source material. It is one of Stephen King's most famous books. But aside from a two-part TV movie starring Tim Curry, it has never been given a proper feature-length adaptation. Decades of anticipation fueled the movie's box office performance as audiences showed up to finally see what a big-budget version of this story would look like. By the time it left theaters, it had become only the third R-rated feature to crack $700 million worldwide, an astonishing feat for a horror flick. The Matrix Reloaded enjoyed an impressive box office run, but it wasn't exactly a surprise. The original Matrix had been a pop culture phenomenon. Easily one of the best sci-fi movies ever, it helped to reshape the blockbuster landscape back in 1999. People were eagerly awaiting a follow-up, and it was no shock to see that sequel making a killing at the worldwide box office. Still, few people would have guessed just how big Reloaded turned out to be.
Whoa.
At $741.8 million worldwide, Reloaded surpassed the original Matrix and became, at the time, the highest-grossing R-rated movie in history. What made it an especially impressive haul was the fact that Reloaded also outgrossed all but one other live-action title at the worldwide box office in 2003. The promise of more Matrix adventures was always going to be a surefire recipe for box office success, but a memorable marketing campaign and positive advance buzz ensured that The Matrix Reloaded had more to lean on than its predecessor's reputation. For a long time, it seems like a Deadpool movie was destined to remain a mere hypothetical, something Ryan Reynolds would always get asked about in interviews without ever actually getting made. It took a positive reaction to some leaked test footage for 20th Century Fox to finally give the film the green light. Given the eventual success of Deadpool, the studio's reluctance to make the movie now feels staggeringly short-sighted. At the time though, R-rated superhero films were persona non grata in Hollywood, and the X-Men movies hadn't been able to launch any truly successful spin-off titles. But Deadpool overcame the odds thanks to an ingenious, pervasive marketing campaign that deftly conveyed the movie's uniquely irreverent attitude.
Fake laugh, hiding real pain.
The result was a movie that blew away all previous X-Men movies at the box office, with a gargantuan $782.6 million worldwide box office gross. Comedy sequels tend to have a history of making significantly less money than their predecessors, but it seems there was no need to worry that Deadpool 2 would fall prey to the same trend. Despite opening directly in the wake of the record-breaking Avengers Infinity War, Deadpool 2 still took in a sizable box office haul, with an eventual Chinese release of the film's PG-13 cut bringing its lifetime box office gross to $785.8 million. Deadpool 2 managed to avoid becoming the next Wayne's World 2 by, among other means, emphasizing new characters such as Cable and Domino in its marketing. As a result, audiences were reassured they received something with Deadpool 2 that they wouldn't get by simply rewatching the original. Oppenheimer became a worldwide phenomenon the moment it touched down in theaters. Concerns about J. Robert Oppenheimer's story only having appeal for North American moviegoers quickly vanished as the movie racked up an astonishing $975.4 million worldwide gross, including $645.5 million overseas. For comparison's sake, Inception, a previous Christopher Nolan movie, had made $839 million worldwide 13 years earlier, and that one had both big action sequences and Leonardo DiCaprio to bolster its appeal. Many factors made Oppenheimer essential movie-going for audiences worldwide. However, nothing helped more than the film being such a huge hit with audiences and critics alike. By rights, Oppenheimer should have been a box office loser, but those reviews and early word of mouth turned it into a game-changer for R-rated global blockbusters. Oh, and the whole Barbenheimer thing probably didn't hurt either.
Murray, one small thing.
Yeah.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
There's no other way to describe Joker's $1.08 billion worldwide box office other than staggeringly impressive. For one thing, the film was massively profitable, considering it cost only $55 million to make. For another, Joker became the first R-rated movie in history to crack $1 billion at the worldwide box office. It also outgrossed nearly every other Batman movie, as well as practically every 2019 tentpole release, from Toy Story 4 to Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. So how did it pull this off? Not only is the Joker a beloved comic book character, but the trailers and posters for the movie immediately captured the eye. The fact that it was all anyone could talk about in the fall of 2019 made it the kind of water cooler movie you just had to see. All these qualities yielded a box office trailblazer that struck a chord with moviegoers around the globe. It was always expected that Deadpool and Wolverine would continue the hit box office streak of its predecessors, especially since it was the first movie in the franchise to take place within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The movie certainly stood a chance of performing better than those first two Deadpool movies, but whoever thought it would go this far?
Let's give the people what they came for!
Worldwide, Deadpool and Wolverine has grossed over $1.150 billion to date. That haul handily outpaced Joker to make it the biggest R-rated feature globally and only the second to exceed $1 billion. The movie surpassed the worldwide grosses of PG-13 MCU fare, such as Captain Marvel and Spider-Man Far From Home, while also beating the global hauls of the two previous Deadpool movies by a significant margin. Once again, it seems a merc with a mouth is a champion of R-rated cinema.